Psychologist Jo Hemmings. Afternoon to you, Jo. I mean, how do you begin to heal a family rift of this scale?
Well, yeah, I mean, I take a different view to Tom, actually. I do think this might be the beginning of something. I think Harry would have had a very visceral instinct. I think when you hear, look, it's his sole surviving parents, he's probably full of fear. He may feel guilty, probably feels helpless. It actually sort of knocks the stuffing out of you. And I think the fact that his father wanted him to come over, he's come over very quickly. I feel there will be a reconciliation between Harry and his father because that's what they'll both want at this very difficult time. And, I actually respect Harry for doing it. There's been a lot of bad blood. I totally understand that. But this is a point at which, the fragility of life is really exposed. And, all that's gone before will have to be resolved at some point. But at this very moment, he just wants to be with his father.
It's often said, famously, in fact, that parents mess you up, just to rework that famous quotation. But families do as well, right?
Yeah, families do as well, of course. I mean, there's nothing really worse than an estranged family. It's very difficult for everybody. People have to take sides. You can rarely be impartial. But it is one of those moments when you hear very distressing news, particularly something like the brutality of a cancer diagnosis, when this is an opportunity for people to come together and unite, even if they don't deal with the issues. There's a lot to unpack there, as we know, but just for the moment to feel they are together as a family, that sort of blood tie, I think is very hard to break completely, and certainly comes to the fore at times like this.
Well, it's perspective, isn't it? I mean, it often, those shocks and, TV documentaries or documentaries about real life people have been full of these kind of stories, that a shock to the system, a shock to the right in the bullseye of the family, as it were, is often the moment where, despite, some terrible stories that people have in their family history, people have got it back. They've managed to find a way through the nonsense and the hassle and the pain and the hurt.
They have, and I think, under normal circumstances, you always feel, however much you're not willing to connect or repair a relationship, you do recognise there is time on your side. Someone could reach out. There could be a reconciliation. This sort of shock, where you do recognise that fragility, that vulnerability, the fact there may not be a future. I mean, I sincerely hope there is, of course, but there is that moment when you think there may not be the time there to have to kind of reconcile in any way at any point. And I think there's almost like a rush of blood to the head, that really visceral reaction that brings families together at this difficult time, and better now than at funerals, which is another time you see estranged families come together. And then it feels very sad. At this point, it feels, I think, like a very positive thing, and hopefully a good step towards some sort of reconciliation, at least with his father, if not his brother.
Yeah. I mean, certainly it looks as if something has given with his father. The fact that he called him and Harry came over pretty immediately, jumped on a plane. And I think most people would do that, but most people haven't got this kind of backstory, I suppose. I mean, that's first base territory, surely.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Look, I mean, Charles must be feeling the same sort of fear and vulnerability as anybody in that situation. And you reach out to your family. And he reached out to Harry personally. Harry didn't have to hear that from anybody else. And Harry's responded exactly, I imagine, as Charles would have wanted him to. And, I feel quite proud that they're sort of doing this together, because it would be really, if it wasn't going to happen now, we've said time and time again, would it happen at the coronation? Would it happen at the Queen's funeral? Would it happen at all these times? And it didn't, not properly. And I think this is, the best takeaway of a terrible situation, really, a very worrying situation, is that they do feel reconciled.